This is Gina
Hello, hello,
Beavers.
hello. Oh, I thought I was going first.
Sorry, I thought. Well, because I say this is Gina Beavers, then you say Tim Hall, and then I say
Right. No,
welcome.
you're right.
Right?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go.
No.
Do it
This.
again. No editing. We'll keep it like this.
Okay. This is Gina Beavers,
This is Timothy Hall.
and welcome to Unstretched. Was
Oh,
that
is
really
that your like
awkward?
German, or was that like a
I
little?
don't know. I know. I just realized. Okay, so this is something genetic that I can't help. But my mom is known for. She lived in Germany. She doesn't speak German, but she lived there for a few years, and she overpronounces every German word. Like, and I noticed that I do this. Like, I was just saying Wolfgang Tillmans to someone. Like, why would I say it like that? Or my mom will say, like, instead of Birken, I can't even say it, Birkenstock. She'll say Birkenstock. Like, it's very,
Does
so,
she speak German though?
a few words. I mean, they lived in Stuttgart for like 3 or 4 years, but she
Okay.
never took German, like passing
Well,
familiarity
because
with it.
I believe in like pronouncing things
Yeah.
correctly if you
Yeah.
speak the language. That's why I was like
Right.
really strict on like a Raffaello because I
Of
speak Italian
course.
part of my like daily life, and so to
Yeah.
pronounce it in the proper way seems like totally normal and justifiable. But if you're just doing it as a weird affectation, that's probably when it's sort of pretentious or weird. I don't
It's
know.
just weird. Like, those backpacks, JAN Sport, they were really big
Yeah.
in the 90s.
Does
My
she
mom
call
would
it
get in.
Jan sport?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So every
But
time I
like
do
to be
something,
having fun because I do that too. Like I'll pick up with something like Jansport and I'll call it like Jansport just to sort of be ridiculous, you know?
spice it up a little. You gotta
Exactly.
go, totally. Or like people will say Target instead of
Yeah.
Target. Have you heard that? My grandfather used to say that. Yeah.
But like I also like I've told you before, like I feel like I consider myself a linguist. I love languages. And I grew up studying French and then I studied French a lot, like in my late 20s, early 30s. And even though my spoken level French is like probably middle ground, but I still will pronounce anything French with a French accent because I know how it's supposed to sound or be pronounced. So I
Yeah.
feel like, I feel like you can either be doing it when you're being so ridiculous that it's funny, or you do it because you speak the language. But I feel like if it's somewhere in between, it could be a little pretentious or annoying.
Definitely. Well, I speak a little French and I think it still sounds kind of. Well, didn't SNL have a skit at one point where they had journalists who were like reporting on Latin America or South America, speaking like American English, and then immediately cutting into like the heaviest Spanish pronunciations. And at the time, we thought that was really funny, but actually, that's kind of the right thing to do. I know that
Yeah,
Keith does this a lot and struggles a lot with this because he's in wine. So everything is either French or Spanish or Italian, and he wants to get the right pronunciation. Yeah, it's challenging, but yeah,
yeah.
it could also be like jerky. I guess I feel like I probably can't pull it off.
It probably depends upon the context, and if you do the
Yeah,
little laugh at the end, then maybe that's like.
right.
Speaking of German, though, I
Yeah.
have to like get this off my chest because I went to see Robert Wilson's Moby Dick at BAM last night, and I absolutely hated it. And
Oh wow.
and one of the reasons that I hated it is because most of it is like yelling in German.
Wow.
Like all the dialogue is sort of like screaming in German. And I have some kind of um, I don't know, sui generis dislike. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where it comes from, but really cannot tolerate being yelled at in German.
Wow.
Uh, it makes me very upset. And so
Yeah.
like through the whole thing, I'm like, why are they yelling at me in German? I felt so uncomfortable. But also in general, like I didn't like that aesthetic of his production is not for me. It's very like Billy Corgan and Swan meets like Hellraiser meets like a weird kind of Klaus Nomi German 80s
Ooh.
expressionist, which I
Yeah.
love Klaus Nomi, but all those other references, I don't like
Not
that
a
aesthetic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so the aesthetic was like really displeasurable to me. And
Hmm.
there was lots of kind of strobe lights or spotlights that were really aggressive. And the makeup was very like white with like like kind of clown like, which was also made me very uncomfortable. I mean, I spent a lot of the play with my hat in front of my eyes because I could
Just
not
like,
look at it. It was so
mhm.
disconcerting and like distasteful to
Oh
me.
my gosh.
But everyone else seemed to unbelievably love it. I
Really
felt like I was the
love
only
it.
person who was like was
This
like
too.
wheel me out of here on a gurney kind of.
That's
And it gave
amazing.
me nightmares. I felt like last night
Oh,
I tossed
oh
and
my
turned with
God.
like nightmares of like screaming Germans and like weird clowns
Oh
and
God.
scary. This for me. It was the stuff that nightmares are made of. So
Oh my gosh. Oh my
that's
gosh.
my
Wow.
reporting.
Well, that's like a good like warning for people who, you know, have issues with. Yeah. It's when you brought up theater, I had just been thinking about this because I went to this talk, which was in conjunction with that movie. I think we talked about it a couple episodes ago. And it was a very like filmmaker forum. So when they had this like meet and greet at the end with wine and stuff like that, it was very much like an acting crowd. And I was noticing how loud everyone and performing everybody was in the room and how different that is from like artists like hanging out, even though some of us can be a little louder, but like in general, we're not used to like performing for everyone else, which is what actors do. And it took me back to high school when I used to go to all of these theater conferences and one act play festivals and things when we would compete, and the entire auditorium would be teenage actors acting
Scream.
out, just screaming. And then that reminded me of seeing the main stage performance one year that was Waiting for Godot, performed by like 16 and 17-year olds. And so it being alternately so awkward and bad and boring, but they also would ring an alarm like I think maybe, I don't know if you've ever seen this play, but like they would ring an alarm every 10 or 15 minutes or something. So I'd be like falling asleep in my seat and then an alarm would go off. They would all line up and like, I just remember that being one of the most like torturous, like it was also like 2 hours of my life where I was just like, oh my God. Oh,
Theater can be so torturous because you sort of feel stuck in your seat and you don't want to get up and leave because that makes such a dramatic statement that
yeah,
you kind of
yeah.
feel like you're like, but sometimes you just have to make the best of it and put your hat over your head and just start thinking
And
about your
just
artwork, which
start.
is what I was doing. I was like, I'm not
Yeah,
going to pay attention to this artwork. I'm
same.
going to think about the projects that I'm doing.
That's cool. Yeah, like I got very stuck recently in a Rocky Horror Picture Show on Broadway, like Vortex. Have you seen that this is
Oh, no,
happening?
but I love the Rocky Horror Picture
Oh
Show.
my
That's
God. And it's
from
on
high
Broadway.
school.
I would do anything to go see that. If anyone
Maybe we should
wants,
go.
I know I looked at tickets. It was like so expensive. Plus, you kind of want to go when the main guy, like the real Hollywood star,
Would
is.
you go and dress up as somebody or would you go just normal clothes?
I mean, I never participated in that side of Rocky Horror. I mean, I'd be up for it. I just don't. I feel like I would be out of my depth.
I would
Yeah,
dress up like a time warper.
yeah,
I
yeah.
always sort of identify like I used to I once got kicked out of a diner because I was time warping in like the aisle of the
Yes.
diner because I was so obsessed with the idea of like the time warp maybe possibly being a way to jump the timeline.
So cool. I love it. Yeah. Well, someday I'll have the money to
I
go see
hope.
that.
Do you sometimes enjoy really bad theater? Because actually, sometimes I really enjoy like really bad Shakespeare, like a
Uh-huh.
community Shakespeare production is for
Yeah.
me sometimes sublime. Like I just
Yeah.
love overly earnest but poorly delivered Shakespearean community theater.
I love it. Yeah, that's well, I've seen a lot of theater. My sister's an actress and like seen a lot of high school community. Like the only time I ever saw Hamilton was the traveling, production in Wisconsin because my sister was
Mhm.
working at the theater and she got us tickets. So like I feel like I'm pretty, and we sometimes go see like we saw West Side Story when they redid that a couple years ago. We saw what did we see that? Oh, we saw that amazing play about Lehman Brothers. I don't know if you remember that. That was one of the greatest. It started in the UK. It has like three actors on stage the entire time, and it's about the fall of Lehman Brothers and the history of it. It's like, I'll think of it. I'll post it. It was so I vet a lot of my theater. I mean, if I have a choice and I'm paying, I'm going to like vet it like heavily. Like I want to make
Sure.
sure my money
I
is.
mean, admittedly, I really don't see a lot of theater at all. But since moving back to the city in our part-time capacity, one of the things that Corey and I have been doing is trying to go see as much theater
Yeah.
or music as possible. Mostly, what we've been doing, this is like a pro hack for like living affordably in the city. Is most of what we've been doing is going to the New School or NYU or Juilliard to all their sort of final year productions or midterm productions. And so we've seen a lot of great theater and music and dance, and most of it we've not paid for because almost all of that's free. You just have to RSVP for it. And
That's
so
amazing. That
that's
is
a way
such a
of sort of
hack.
getting some good
Yeah.
culture, but also feeling like you live in a college town too, because actually, if you think about it, New York City is like a college town.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there's so many schools with so many productions or, plays or music or dance that you can almost always be going to something like that. And we do, like, that's sort of a big sort of cultural
Yeah.
participation.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. We do have a community theater out here, and because we're only like 30 minutes from the city, a lot of those actors are, back and forth. Like it's a great quality because they're actually like, yeah, working in New York. Plus, they kind of call this where Broadway goes to sleep, like our whole area. And I know from our Facebook group when the Tonys were announced last year that there was like a huge thread. Okay, everybody put their hand up. Who got nominated for a Tony? And it was like, I did the choreography. I got nominated for choreography for this, and I did sound. Sound. I have a costume. I was just like blown away by the number of like people connected to like
I
Broadway
guess
out here.
where I'm from and where I live upstate is where
Yeah.
amateurs go to die, sort of thing. Like our community theater is definitely like the small town lawyer who retired and now wants to be an actor
So,
kind of thing, and is
yeah, yeah,
sort of
yeah.
terrible but wants to do it so bad. Like
Yeah.
that's like the community theater where I live.
Right, right. Well, it's interesting to me too, like why so many performing artists and not so many like high caliber visual artists like that. Like
Yeah.
why not? Like that.
Well, they're
That's
usually
kind of
more low profile. Like where I live, we have a lot of sort of community artists who are very
yeah.
active, very vocal, very in the
Right,
community
right, right.
with their art. But we also have a lot of famous artists who are very
Hmm.
low key. They don't go to anything,
Okay.
show up in anything. They're like very like, they just
Yeah.
keep it very private and quiet. And so it's interesting, like there's that difference between like the community artist who's like really involved. And I've sort of vacillated back and forth. There have been times where I was like really involved in my community as an artist, and other times where I'm totally like invisible and I don't want to be seen or heard. Just
Yeah.
depends upon my mood or my trajectory, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's similar here. I mean, there are tons of artists for sure, and some really good artists. And I do remember when we first moved out here, there's this insane modernist house on a hill. Have I said this before? And I
No.
kept looking at it when we first moved out here. I was like, who lives there? Like a hedge funder, like some surgeon. Like it's just so beautiful and fancy and nice. And it's Von Span, artist who shows, I think, with Almeen, amazing
Yeah.
artist, young artist, has a family. They all go to local schools. Like, yeah, it's very cool. I was like, okay, so that's interesting. So they're probably here. I just don't, we don't like connect very
Yeah.
much, or we all have different lives. And yeah,
My neighbor, who was a ceramic high school teacher, like locally upstate, I was out gardening and she came up to me and she's like, "You'll never believe who I saw at the pond store buying some fish." And I was like, "Who?" And she's like, "Kahinda Wiley." I was like, "Kahinda Wiley? What's he doing at like our local pond store buying fish?" And it turns out he has like a big estate not far from where I live, but I
interesting.
had no idea.
No, I know. Yeah, I guess you sort of move out into those spaces because you want a little anonymity. I
Yeah,
only
here's
know.
my neighbor who's a ceramics teacher who like
That
recognized.
was exactly who. Well, and I figured out the Von Span thing because they did do a profile in Architectural Digest.
Oh, okay.
It
Well, there
it
you go.
was, yeah. So it's not like a huge secret or anything.
But you know what? Also, this is slightly on off topic, but I have a friend who's an architect, and they recently posted an image of a painting studio they're working on. And it's really beautiful. And they're like, we're working on this painting studio for this and for that, and so this is a really good friend of mine. So I wrote to him, and I was like, I'm like, I'm sure you probably can't tell me, but who is the painter
Hmm.
designing the studio for, because it's very particular. It's very interesting. And of course, he was like, "Oh, we're sworn to secrecy. We can't
Yeah.
say anything." And then I kind of went off for a minute, like, "What the fuck is up with all this like privacy like that? Why
Yeah.
does everything have to have like an NDA or like a no compete or like there's this sort of pervasive concept of like extremo like who cares who the painter is who's having this place designed like
Hmm.
why who are they afraid is going to find out like
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like I there's a part of me that feels like there's something that's kind of sad about you know
Yeah.
this like obsession with having to be so like secret
So
and private
private. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
um I
Well,
don't
I
know.
think I can appreciate the celebrity aspect of it. Like I noticed like some people hide their Google search like on Google Maps. So like you couldn't so like is there some way that someone could trace back where that is and then stalk
But
or show
sorry,
up or
there is no painter, Gina, who is so famous that they actually need to practice some kind of high modicum of privacy. Like give me a
yeah, I
break.
guess.
Like
I
like
guess.
name
Yeah,
like
I
the
don't know.
most famous painter. They're all like dead, like Basquiat or
Yeah.
something. Like
Yeah.
maybe like Julian Schnabel, but you know what? No one knows
Yeah.
who he is outside of the art world, really.
Yeah.
And so that's what annoys me. It's
Yeah.
like get over yourself kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
like you think that like people are going to be lining up at your door being like, let us in and see your new paintings,
Yeah, yeah. I guess maybe they fear being canceled for being so rich.
you
Is
know
that
what, I
possible?
actually kind of hate to say it, but that's probably true.
It's just like in a moment when people are struggling, like, how dare you? Like that kind of energy, or like you just don't want people in your financial affairs, kind of. But I don't know. It's also, I remember I had all of that just perpetuates this idea of like mystery around value and who's making what, and like half of us don't know. And like I
That's
had
why I resent.
yeah, when I don't know how to talk about it without sounding, but like I did have an assistant once say, like, well, at Jeff Koons' studio, they do this. And it's like, just this idea of like, yes, I have a studio and I have an assistant for a certain period of time, but the fact that in this person's mind, my studio and Jeff Koons' studio could afford to do the same things is a problem. Like we need more like financial literacy or something among, but you also can't blame people because it's like, it's so opaque, like, all of this. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it reminds me of when, because Corey, my husband, works at Marion Boesky Gallery and he's worked there for a long time. So he really knows how like a higher level gallery runs and operates and does things. And when I've had shows at smaller galleries that don't have big budgets, sometimes he would get angry at the gallery and be like, well, why aren't they doing this? Or why aren't they sending out this PDF or, and I'm like, you have to remember that like, there's certain standards that these bigger, more sort of higher end galleries can do because they have a staff of 20 people versus
Mm.
this gallery I'm showing with is only one person doing everything. And like, so they just can't provide the kind of like, services that you would think. And I feel like then you have to remember that and be like, oh yes, okay, so it's a different kind of like ball game that we're playing.
Yeah. And then there's those are all trade-offs too. It's like the smaller the staff, like sometimes the more freedom you have. I mean, maybe you're not going to make the money that you might make in a bit, but it's also, these are all, the bigger the staff, the more overhead, the narrowing sometimes of the options that you have in terms of your work, like what they will show, what they will sell, So a smaller space that has fewer people might afford more freedom to the artist as well. So it's like
Yeah.
it does, like it doesn't it's not like strictly all good in one direction either,
But I've also never worked as hard in my life as I do during the period that I have my show. Because
Yeah.
I feel like basically all the galleries I've ever showed with are maybe three people max who work there.
Mhm.
So when the show is up, like
Mhm.
I'm actually spending an incredible amount of time like on the phone, getting people to come, corralling collectors, talking to writers, like getting friends to go see it. Like I'm always amazed at like artists who open a show and then go to like Puerto Rico for a month or something. Like I feel like
Yeah.
the real work begins once the show opens and like getting people there and getting, working
Yeah.
also to help sell things and so, but to
Totally.
me, that's also part of the fun and sort of jockeying of it is like you know,
Totally. Yeah, I think that's really good advice and really good practice. Yeah,
yeah, you
I
can't just,
remember.
and because a lot of people get mad at their gallerists because they're like, oh, they're not doing this, they're not doing that. But then you also have to remember that they are one person and they don't maybe have a big team
Right,
or they're already having to think about the next show that's coming
right.
up. And so you as the artist, you unfortunately you can't just make the work and put it up and leave. Like I feel like part
Mhm.
of your responsibility is still advocating for yourself and getting people in there and even showing up or doing a little
Mhm.
walkthrough or organizing a talk. We see those things happening. Like those, I think those are all like very important parts of having an exhibition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on the topic of like galleries and shows, I was having some conversations out last night, yesterday about this phenomenon, and I don't know if it's right now or if this happens in general, of a gallery approaching you for a show, you make the work for a show, and then the show gets canceled or sort of postponed indefinitely. And for artists who put significant time and say money into a specific concept for a show or something like that, like how that leaves artists like sort of holding the bag, like in this way. That seems like it should absolutely be avoidable. Like, like how does this
I don't know
happen?
but I don't know if that is avoidable because sometimes, like I think it was Ernest Hemingway said that bankruptcy happens gradually and then all at once. And
Yeah.
and so sometimes I feel like
Yeah.
the gallery goes from being solvent to insolvent
Like,
in like a month period. And so I do think that, that's just a part of the
yeah.
gamble again of being an
Yeah. So
artist.
that's probably the lesson of it is like 9 times out of 10, this is the first of a potential closure. Like,
Yeah.
so the fact that you may feel completely destitute about it, but you still have the work, you haven't shipped it out, you have it in your studio, like, and that you don't end up being their last show before they close, which can also really be bad, or it's potentially a sign that they're not going to make it. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Yeah, that's a
I don't
really
know if I've ever had that experience. I mean, there was a time where I was working on a series of drawings and I was talking to a gallery about possibly doing like a suite of drawings in like their project space. And then they moved spaces sort of unexpectedly and the conversation just got like totally dropped. And I sort of had raised it again, and then they had gotten distracted with some other things in their project. They didn't have the same project room, and so I was just like, all right, well, that opportunity sort of came and then
hmm
vanished, and you just have to kind of roll with those punches. And
hmm
I tried to sort of reach out to some other people and be like, hey, I've got this suite of drawings that was going to be shown, but then there wasn't any traction for that, and eventually they were shown in different contexts, but sometimes you also have to let go of an idea you have that you think is going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, and this idea of making work for a show versus making your work. Like, I had someone say to me, like, they just prefer when artists are just always working, they're not working for something, and then, people can come in and sort of pick, but it's like that, how realistic is that? If you have like an ongoing career and you're trying to show, is it really realistic to just have this practice that is just ongoing and not directed anything? I don't know.
I think so. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
work. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm kind of always working on paintings, always
Hmm.
working on drawings, as if I have a show coming up. And
Hmm.
some of them are really distinct bodies of work, but some of them are really nebulous and all over the place. And so, in a way, I'm kind of waiting for the right gallerist or curator to come in and be like, "Oh, I love these, and I see a vision, and let's do
Hmm.
it."
Hmm.
And I feel like I'm always just ready to do it. Like,
Hmm.
let's do it.
Like,
Okay,
let's
fine.
do
Like,
it.
I like,
Yeah, this is
yeah,
good.
I.
Yeah, that's great.
But that's how I've kind of had to learn to work because my gallery career has been sort of all over the place. I haven't actually been represented, quote unquote, by a gallery for like 12 years. And so even though I showed with Ashes Ashes a couple of shows in LA and New York, he didn't represent artists. So, there wasn't like that feeling of like, oh, I'm represented. And I've done different shows with like Halsey McKay and Kristen Lorello, but there was never the discussion of like representation or continuing on. And part of me is sort of profoundly sad about that because I'm like a very monogamous and committed type of a person. And I loved working with a gallery. Like when I was represented by Fitzroy Gallery in the Lower East Side, like I love like strategizing about shows. I love sharing ideas. I love the collaboration of like the gallerist and the artist building something together. I really cherish that. And part of me feels like, ooh, I'm a free agent. This is cool. But another part of me feels like, oh, I'm like floating and single and kind of frustrated. So it's a weird, you know, I'm in a
Yeah.
weird place in my mid career where I
Hmm.
have many gallery shows and museum shows and I'm in some collections and stuff, but no one is actually going to bat for me on a
Hmm.
regular kind of basis. And that is, that's hard, but that's part of the reality, I think, of what, who knows what'll happen when it will happen. But that's why I'm always
Yeah.
ready
Yeah.
I'm always working and always ready because I don't know when
Hmm.
lightning is going to strike or someone's going to say, oh, look at Tim's work, da da da.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about this idea of like working for a show versus not working for a show.
Well, what do
And
you
part,
do? Like, what's your
well,
kind
I
of,
mean, part of it is just like, if you come off a streak of like having a show or two a year, you're just automatically working for a show. Like the space is kind of in your mind. Maybe you're even making a model of it. So then, and for my work, it's like I have to start everything kind of at the same time so that it will all dry in time. So I have to sort of know what I'm making. And I remember like 5 or 6 years ago when I had my show and I took this artist through, much younger than me, very successful artist. And we were talking about that, and they were kind of, I'm just going to say, a little bit judgmental about the fact that I plan an entire body of work for a space. Like, oh, like, what do you mean? Like, which is kind of crazy because, of course, lots of sculptors, lots of artists have to do that. I mean,
yeah, it's called
painters,
site specificity.
yeah, like painters in general are sort of raised on like, this kind of like, toiling in the studio and then whatever will be, and so that's what this artist was saying, that they like sort of work and then bring a bunch of work and then see what works in the space. And it was kind of, there was a little bit of a tinge of like a holier than thou about it at the
Yeah.
time. And I was like, oh, like, I guess they really are like a more pure artist than me. Like I'm like selling out to the corporate, like, of it all. I don't know. That's sort of how I felt. But then I recently, this is now 6 years later, saw that this person had a presentation in which I 100% know that they figured out the scale of the works should be, and a certain presentation for a certain 100%. So that I felt like, okay, so that was just their perspective at the time, and now things have gotten so busy for them that they are also making concessions to like how might I plan what I'm going to make. Plus, I think this person's market has gone pretty wild, and it's like they have to control the scale and how many and all these other considerations. And it doesn't make me feel good. It just makes me feel like, okay, I wasn't
Yeah.
crazy, like,
Well, I think
yeah.
that like I try to strike a balance. Like when I was asked to do the show at the Carlos Museum in Atlanta, that then I approached it as a very site specific project because I had like a year and a half like out from the show. And so I could actually say all of these works are specific to that space and specific to the museum and the conceptual construct of the museum and everything. And so, yeah, sometimes like, and also when Ryan of Housing McKay said, "Oh, I want to do a solo show with you," I went into the mode of like, okay, well, actually, I'm going to make all these new paintings that are sort of for that space and thinking of that space. So as I'm also just working year round on anything, I can kind of switch gears quickly to start conceptualizing it more for a unique space and working towards that opportunity. So it kind of, I think it depends upon what the opportunity is and how, when it comes and what your lead time is.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, for
And
sure.
especially though, if you're lucky, like you were saying, that if you're going from one solo exhibition to another, then you're just kind of always working towards whatever the exhibition or the art fair, whatever it is. And
Mhm.
that can be, on the one hand, I think fun because you're like, ooh, I'm successful. But on the other hand, I've heard from artists who are like, that's when I feel like I'm actually in a rat race and like just working not for the art
100%.
anymore, but for the
Yeah.
opportunity, or for, like
For the
it
hamster
almost.
wheel. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
Exactly the hamster wheel of like, which on the one hand one wants to be in, but on the other hand
Mhm.
one doesn't. Once they get
Right.
into that, they're like, oh shit, I don't want to be in it.
Yeah, no, it's such a tricky thing because I was thinking about that. I remember reading, I think Louise Bonet was talking about like if one wish in the studio and it was like to have unlimited time to finish a piece.
Yeah.
And you think about that, how long would a piece really take? And I've had more time lately. Like I have a project next year, so it's like have some time to like. So I've been questioning that a lot. Like, why do I feel like I need to finish this? Part of it is I want to get on to the next thing, and I wanted, a furious kind of pace. I want to see things realized. But then at the same time, isn't there just such a joy and just letting it tell you how long it's going to take? Like, I don't know. It's such a mind. And that's something I also have back to theater, left over from theater, which was like, you do all these dress rehearsals and then it's the night of the show and you're just doing it. It's like you sometimes can only work on something until it just has to, go somewhere or you move on to the next thing or whatever. You just have to sort of call it because it's time. So,
Well, and
um,
that's what's good about sometimes having a show is like you're like, this painting has to be done because it has to get out the door.
yeah, yeah,
Whereas there's
yeah.
other paintings that I've been working on now for like 3 years, and every couple of months I change it because there's no reason for me not to. I'm like, ooh, I'm
Right,
gonna totally
right.
change this because now I got a new idea. Or
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
so,
both modes, yeah, I think are necessary and important parts of the whole kind of, like, um, yeah. And part of that is like we're talking about making work, but it's like the place where that intersects with career. Cause I've been thinking about that a lot, like how to separate. Like I was talking to an artist who was saying all of the kind of machinations of the gallery that she's dealing with and all of this stuff is distracting from the work and she needs to like find a way to have a bubble in the studio. But it's so hard. I mean, here we were talking about finishing work, but then it's all up against this prospect of showing it, which is then gets into the career side of it all. And it's like these two things are so intertwined sometimes. It's like so hard to separate like the purity of making from the yeah.
well, that's my like one of my approaches now, like my sort of middle age approach is much more Zen oriented in that I just want to go with the flow of whatever is kind of happening, right? Like
Mhm.
people come to my studio often and like, well, what gallery would you want to show with? Like what galleries are
Mhm.
you interested in? And my
Mhm.
answer now is like, I'm only interested in the gallery that's interested in me. Like I'm
Mhm.
only interested in working with somebody who's interested in my work, is interested
Right.
in my ideas, jives with my energy. Like I'm not just running and racing out to show with like Luring Augustine because they're a big gallery that sells
Right, right,
work.
right.
Like if
Right.
like I'd actually rather be showing maybe with a smaller gallery that doesn't really sell work but has a great vibe and program and energy. And so that to me has become much more important in terms of like how to have a working relationship with
Hmm.
in a
Yeah.
career, you know.
Right. I mean,
You would
so
raise something, Gina, about the difference between being a difficult artist or not. And I feel like often when you're a difficult artist, it's because you're actually working with someone who you don't jive well with. The energy isn't
yeah.
good or right sometimes, and that can create the energy or environment of like being a difficult artist because they're not listening to what your vision is, or they're not working with you with your vision. You have to
Hmm.
ask for something that, you know, they're not
Yeah.
willing to give them.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Well, I started thinking about this. I'm sorry to bring it up again. You'll probably hear me bring it up several more times, but the Lena Dunham memoir, she has a really fantastic chapter, a couple chapters about when she first became successful, trying to honor every single person that asked her to do anything. People would ask her for an autograph, stop on the sidewalk, she'd take 10 minutes with them, where she felt this like side of, on the one hand, I don't want to be known as difficult or bitchy. On the other hand, it's also a karmic thing. Like if I pay all of this back, maybe it will make up for the fact that I've gained all this success. So the more
Yeah.
I put out there in terms of like kindness and time, then somehow that will protect me from all of these, right? But actually, it was like she was using a lot of her time and energy in ways that, in the end, made her feel really exhausted and depleted. Uh, so that idea of like actually, maintaining your space, maintaining your time, having like boundaries, things like that, do those things then get read as difficult? Like if you try to, it's just kind of an interesting, I think like anybody, not that artists and fame is on any way the level of someone like Lena Dunham, who
Right.
has also all this like notoriety because of social media and all these things that cling to her. But there is a certain parallel in the art world of like a certain kind of attention and then what people expect from you and then how do you fulfill, so I think it's like interesting thing to think about. And I think I personally have engaged with that in the sense that I had heard stories about difficult artists, right, as I was coming up, and I was
Always.
trying very hard. Like I remember the one story I'd heard was about this artist who, the people that were presenting the project put like tens of thousands of dollars into like one version of it, and then a week before decided that they didn't like the palette or something, and then forced them to spend another several tens of thousands of dollars to fix and it was like a shade different one to the other. And at the time I thought that was so insane. That space ended up closing eventually but that person has been in multiple high profile biennials like since then. So I don't think the fact that they basically put the space out of business because of like this very minute decision has affected their career at all. You know what I mean? So I think that sometimes people tell themselves like, oh, you don't want to be difficult because it's going to affect my career. But in fact, some people I feel like may even ride that difficultness to like seriousness, like that maybe they're often like they're taken more seriously because they're really, I don't know. That I don't know if that's true, but that's like my perception of it. So having that story in my head, I've always thought, well, I want to be like if the better and kinder and more flexible I am, you know, like I want to be a good person,
Would
whatever.
you say that you're not a difficult artist? Will you go on
Well,
the
so
record
this
as
is this is what I want to say. I think that I am a difficult artist because I tried so hard not to be a difficult artist. And I ended up making things more difficult. So for
right?
instance, I kept like all my galleries in the game, right? I don't want to like select which gallery, not this gallery. But then now I have multiple galleries like just like what do you want, like just by making everyone happy, I'm making no one happy, and in that way becoming more difficult. I'm not saying this is ongoing, I'm just saying this is a reflect like something I realized at one point about myself, and the way that I was that sometimes you can lean so hard and into not being difficult that you actually become really difficult,
Yeah.
just not in the way that you anticipated. So
I was
um,
once told I was really difficult because I was having sort of vision arguments about like I
mhm,
had a vision for what I wanted the show to look like and the installation style. And it was a little ambitious, and like I made a whole wall installation that of like many different pieces, many different disparate pieces, and I wanted it to be sold as one work, and the gallery was like, that's impossible. No one's going to buy like one work of 20 framed things. And I was like, well, they do of so and so, or they did of such and such, and so I had this like bravado of like, no, this is my vision. It has to be this way. And they said like, you're being a very difficult artist about
Really?
it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, this is what I want to do with it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do have to toe the line and be like, you know what? Maybe I am being difficult here, but my vision, I need to gamble on my, again, the
Yes.
gambling. I need to gamble on my vision and see if it works out or not.
Absolutely. I mean, what else can you do? It's like those are the last legs that you stand on. And if you give those up, then you're just sort of floating out in the ocean. The other thing that bothers me is like, if you tell me this can't happen or that can't happen especially for commercial reasons, and I assent to it, then it better work for commercial reasons. Like
Yeah,
it better
yeah.
sell all the, like if I say, okay, you can split those 20 pieces up, then they better sell, like don't come to me I compromise my vision. And then, so it's kind of a lesson in there, like to not compromise
Here's
your vision.
here's the greatest lesson I think I have for the youngins is do not think that you can actually like time the market or do work that you think is going to sell. And so,
Hmm.
you do that because in my life experience, there have been times where I thought like, oh, I'm going to do this or do that because I know that, collectors are buying this or buying that, or they like it this way or that way, or the gallery sells this kind of work or that kind of work. And every time in my experience that I've
Hmm.
done that, it has failed. And when I've
Yeah.
done work that I didn't even think about the market
Yeah.
or didn't even think about the commercial aspect of it is usually when
Hmm.
that work has sold really well. And
Hmm.
so it's sort of like I don't know what that it's like I guess is that irony, I suppose. And so
Or
what I
it's the purity of it. I mean, you
yeah.
want to kind of sort of believe in the honesty and the purity of your effort being recognized as valuable. I mean, that's ultimately what we all want, right? Is
Yeah.
the more honest and direct and that we were with the piece or the body of work that was recognized, and it
Yeah.
was given a value and people wanted to buy it. I mean, that's the dream, I think. But
So when I was an undergraduate in college, there was a little restaurant in my hometown, Warwick, and they would have art exhibitions in the restaurant, and it was pretty locally respected. Like people in the community actually bought artwork from this restaurant when they would do a show, and the artwork would be on the walls around the tables. And so I got a show there, and I did the weirdest stuff, like just totally weird college artist, freaky deaky kind of work. And it was really successful. And I sold a ton of that work. And, granted, it was like $50, $100, $200. But I was like, wow, this is amazing. And even the woman who ran the restaurant was like, oh, we're going to give you another show because this was so successful. And so for a year, I worked on another show for this restaurant. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to really nail it now. And I'm going to make like Matisse like paintings that are going to look so perfect in this restaurant and so good in a home and in someone's dining room. And so I made these really beautiful, like Matisse, colorful flower vase paintings. And they're beautiful, framed, matted, everything. Not one of them sold. Total, total commercial failure. And I remember asking some people, like, did you see the show? And they're like, oh, I thought that was just the decor of the restaurant. I didn't even know they were for sale.
oh my
Um, and
gosh.
so I kind of that was where I like learned this lesson of like when you just make the weirdest fucking work,
Yeah.
that's what people will stick out and respond to. But when you make the
Yeah.
work that looks just too good and too right,
Mhm.
then people might just totally
They
ignore it and
might
not even
not.
see it.
Yeah, that's a really good lesson. I also think sometimes, depending on the audience, what looks like art is going to, and their idea of what art looks like versus what they think, doesn't look like art, like looks like decor. Well, because I remember going to like an in service with a bunch of art teachers when I was a public school art teacher at the Guggenheim. They wanted to, the only serious art that they saw at the Guggenheim were the classic paintings, the Van Goghs, they all had like sort of, some of them had like ornate frames and they looked like painting and they were, right? But they had this beautiful show at the time that was called Gold or something about We Buy Gold, I think, or something about gold in artworks. And so they had a beautiful like Felix Gonzalez Torres, it's like a gold beaded curtain that's all like worn off. They had a Ronnie, I think it was Ronnie Horn with like this piece of gold, almost like gold. It's all gold leaf, but it's flexible and it like lying on the floor. It was just like a spectacular show. And they obviously brought us in because we were all city like art teachers. And they were like, this is a show that you can like, you know, we'll relate to popular culture in this way and the fascination with gold. And like, you'll be able, none of the other art teachers saw any kind of relationship between the classroom and the communities we work in and this more experimental show. They just like kept focusing on what looked like art. None of this other stuff looked like art, you know? So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think people's expectations of what art is. And so some people love to see like abstract expressionist mark making or something that looks like Andy Warhol because they're like, that looks like art, you know? I don't know. It's constantly shifting and like, who knows how you could get a finger on, like pinpoint it. But I just thought that was really funny at the time.
Gina, did you ever do any like weird shows in cafes or restaurants?
Are you kidding? In Charlottesville, the coffee shop right on the corner. And what's so funny about the coffee shop shows is like the 90s, like the late 90s.
That's when I did mine, yeah.
That's the era of Friends.
Yeah.
Coffee shops. I mean, this is hard to explain to younger people, but like we didn't really have coffee shops before that. That was not a thing. Yeah, the whole idea that now coffee like runs the planet and you have obviously Starbucks, we're so far beyond that, but like a coffee place in every neighborhood or you see a coffee place coming, you're like, oh fuck, it's gentrified now. Like, but remember we were at the beginning of that. Like there was that coffee place like on Houston, Botanica. Do you remember that place? Downstairs with all the couches and they had art, I remember. But yeah, I did one in Charlottesville I don't think if I sold anything, I'd be really surprised. But yeah, I just remember at the time, it was like such a novel, cool thing. Like I'm having a show at this coffee shop. I should see if I have any flyers.
I also did those art fairs where they're like outside on like a garden and they put up like a fence, like a snow fence. You put your art on the snow fence. Like I like in college, I did a bunch of these like community art fairs where I had to set up my own weird little booth and hang all my work up. And it was all kind of like, you know, I had like little business cards and I was like, ooh, I'm an artist, like doing this, you know, cut some back.
Yeah, I think now that's all happening online. Like people have all these businesses, right? Or all these like social media. Well, and like not to be like, but like Gagosian started like selling work on the street. Like that's literally, I mean, which is so wild. But yeah, I mean, you have to start somewhere.
You do. And you know, you just keep trying and you keep, you know, it's like I don't feel like there's that much difference now between then, like you know what?
No. It's just a different form, but it's still the same. Yeah. It's one thing I wanted to talk about, which actually happened a couple weeks ago now, because we did our live podcast, so I didn't really get a chance to talk about it. But I went to a comedy night organized by an art foundation where they invited a bunch of artists, and we went to the Cellar downtown and listened to a night of comedy as like a way to just brighten up artists' lives.
I don't know if that's sad or what.
But it was a very funny experience because it was really great. I was like really honored to be invited, but it was started at 7:30. We're all like sober, you know, but it's the Comedy Cellar,
Like
which
senior
is
citizen comedy show, like
basically
early bird special comedy.
We're all super sober. The comedy acts start and they're extremely blue, like extremely raunchy right off the bat. Just as raunchy, dick, sex, like every joke that you can think of. And the, you know, the foundation head and all of the staff and everybody's there. So it's like kind of going to comedy with like your your dad, like, even though this person
It's
is
very awkward.
not that much older than me, but I still feel like they're like a dad, like my dad, because feel so young, immature or something. But anyway, but as we're sitting there and I'm thinking about comedians and like their lifestyle versus art and how much we have in common in a lot of ways, how precarious artists' lives and comedians' lives. But I was also thinking like, oh my God, like comedians have a sort of humiliation kink in a way where they could go on stage and like subject themselves to like a silent room after a joke, in the way that artists continually like put ourselves out there in this way that could be potentially humiliating, like constantly,
Yeah. You
like
can
I was just,
definitely put up a solo show and get no reviews and sell nothing. And that totally feels like a joke that does not land.
yeah, it feels like very, and then we just continue to put ourselves in the same situation, but the high is so high, like when a comedian like pulls off a joke or pulls off a set and has the whole room like roaring, that high is so high, or you make a body of work that you just feel amazing about, or or does do well, like commensurate with like the amount of work you put in, that high, feels, we just are, it's like a drug. So I thought that was really funny.
But it's funny you talk about like comedian, like sort of the precarious life of the comedian. And I posted something to our Instagram of this like musician guy who's like, you know what? I was making all this money like a couple of years ago, and
Yeah,
now
yeah,
I'm like
yeah.
making nothing, and I have to like sell everything. And I feel like I'm getting more and more videos of people who are in creative fields. Like this guy also, I just saw a video. He's like, I want a Peabody and I have like negative $25 in my bank account. I'm getting all this content now of like creatives who are
Mm-hmm.
like, I've worked really hard, I've had big successes, but right now I am broke as a fucking
Mm.
joke, or like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and I've
yeah.
got to sell this and get out of that, and I'm so crazy frustrated, very like sort of Josh Klein oriented of like,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute, I was like, I had a Whitney, retrospective, like why can I not afford to live in New York anymore? Like that
Mm-hmm.
kind of shell shock of being a creative person in the city. And I don't know if it's really like, it just seems to be across the creative fields. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like just the art world. It's like Hollywood, it's theater, it's TV,
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, everything, like any kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like
Well,
it's
and I
kind
think,
of,
yeah, I think it's interesting because it's not to bring up real estate, but like when Keith had a restaurant, you have these like tiny margins, right, in a
yeah,
restaurant because you have to pay, your all your overhead and everything, and the margin is so tight that if you go over on your food cost or you have some big repair, like it can really screw you. And I think that all creatives, because we live in the most expensive cities in the world, are all in these tiny margins now. And the minute the
absolutely.
economy and the taste for what we're doing goes out, then we're all just screwed because we're already paying our max that we can at every, and so 10 years ago to go through a downturn would be really shitty, but maybe it wouldn't affect as many people this severely. Like, I mean, that's, I think it's just, not to mention Hollywood and like AI and all of the things that are coming for that industry as being really, threatening. But I mean, we were talking about it, like I've seen artists who I respect so insanely showing with a big gallery and all of a sudden making work that doesn't feel like their work because they're trying to chase after like a sort of billionaire class, or like the work at, the highest price points for
That's so
sure.
sad and obvious, and you totally know when they're doing that.
Yeah, but I just had this realization: why shouldn't the billionaires think that we would make the art that they want? I'm not that we haven't always, there hasn't been an element of that, but the billionaire, Elon Musk went into our federal government and took out agencies he didn't like and took all of our personal. Why? This is a moment when they are completely empowered and they get everything they want. Why would they not think they could do the same in the art world? Like that we would just, some of our greatest minds and people who make such brilliant work would just line up at this trough because they do it in every other aspect, I mean, of our culture. Like, I don't know. It's just like a depressing reality. It also
I
makes
think they do. And I think probably the artists who are right now selling and are, having moments of success, I think probably are largely probably doing just that.
Yeah, it's not, I think, it's sad. I don't know if it's like a broad thing or if it's just a moment in a career or it's like a price point thing or whatever. Or if it was just the way the work was marketed online that I saw, it could be
Yeah.
just a small piece of a broader thing they're doing, but it just seemed like, wait, what happened? It made me respect like Simone Lee, who had been showing briefly at Hauser and now shows with Matthew Marks, and she sort of like switched gears into like, you know what, this is not working for me. Like I want to do what I do. And there must have been some stipulation there that just was intolerable to her, and she stuck to her vision and like,
Yeah, huge respect to
yeah,
Simone Lee for that. I
yeah,
remember reading about that and thinking,
yeah,
wow, like that's
yeah.
pretty.
Yeah, and that can happen at like any level too. But I mean that level of like living in an era when the richest are just running everything. It's like the last thing we have is like our artistic invention and our creativity, and how can we give that away to them? Like they have so many other things. Like I don't know. But speaking of like rich patrons, I did see the Raffaello show
Oh,
yesterday.
yes.
So, yeah, that was
Well, I mean, he worked for God. He worked for the church.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the
When
thing,
people say, oh, they've got more money than Jesus, that's what they're talking about.
yeah. So, I mean, it was just absolutely mobbed, partly because the Met Gala is happening on Monday, so the Met is like squeezed into half the actual floor plan. So, that was psychotic. It was a Friday. It's the Raphael show, so it's already like nuts. But I really had to question what the fuck I was. I mean, it was like a baseball game. It was like at least at a baseball game I could sit down. Like I could barely see the work. It was because it's dark, which it has to be. But then there's like four layers of people between me and half the works. Maybe I could dip in for a couple seconds and see some things.
Um, I
So
felt
that
like
was
I sort of likened it to Lollapalooza.
yeah, yeah,
That's like
exactly.
my cultural reference. Like I
Yeah,
almost felt like a
yeah.
crowd surf over the senior citizens to get to
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
Castiglione painting.
yeah, there was also an element of sort of religious pilgrimage. I don't know if you
Yeah.
noticed that at all, because they're selling a bunch of crosses, and then there was a couple, like at least one sort of religious group that was having a very deep conversation about different like biblical references, which I thought was interesting. Like, that it attracts such wide groups of people, But
Well, I
I did,
love following the biblical talks that they like. There are people
yeah.
who give biblical tours of the ancient collection at the Met, and I've
Mhm.
followed along with them many times and sort of listened to like the biblical tours of like the Assyrian collection or the
Mhm.
ancient
I
Greek
love
collection.
that. Yeah, that's cool. I guess I was more freaked out by the actual devotees, like
Yeah.
that we were in the same space. But I did enjoy, I mean, what I was able to grab. I like those portraits, that like sort of octagonal room with the portraits are just like that's like I
Like the
commit
oil painting portraits.
yes, commit a crime to like obtain one of those. Like they're so, or just live with one or something, or be able to go and see like the one with the fur, like that combination of the dimension and the kind of rock solid three
Yeah.
dimensionality of that like perspective with the sort of subtle like fleeting of a second glance of the sitter with these like ornate. I just like, I mean, I like left and went to the gift shop and looked for like a picture of one, and they're not the same. Like you can't
Yeah.
reproduce that. Like you cannot reproduce that. Just so beautiful. And then some of
I
the
think I'd like to
drawings,
buy the
yeah.
book anyway because the
Yeah, yeah,
drawings are
yeah.
so the metal point that's done on
Yes.
like
Oh my
stuff
God.
metal.
And you think too, like the relative freedom and like looseness and fast quality of the drawing. I mean, it's relative to those like longer pose ones. That feels so like invigorating too, like that process. Some of those like large figurative pieces that are retelling this or retelling that, I feel like interesting from a historical perspective, but from just a purely visual, it reminds me like Keith will laugh at me because I fall asleep during action sequences in movies because it's just like so repetitive and almost like rhythmic. And I kind of feel that with some of those larger like peopled scenes that I'm almost like lulled into this kind of, I don't know, sleepiness or something.
Yeah, and the fresco cycles, I could see that.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, but that was me running through, me popping in. Like I
Yeah.
was like, I'm gonna have a panic attack if I stay in here.
Yesterday, I went to the Conductor Art Fair at Powerhouse Arts in
Oh,
Gowanus.
cool.
Yeah, which was pretty interesting because Matteo Caligari has a nonprofit, Light for the Amazon, and he was presenting a series of his paintings to raise funds for his Amazon education initiative. And it was fun to sort of walk through the whole exhibitors because the idea is this art fair for what they call the global majority. And so the artists have to be sort of non-Western or from the global South kind of thing. And so it was all galleries or nonprofits that present different work from different areas of the world. So it was very international in its flair and had sort of different kinds of indigenous work and people doing, contemporary art, but with different kind of materialities. And so it was really interesting to go to see that. And I also hadn't been to Gowanus in a while, so that area's really transformed and changed. It's like unrecognizable practically.
Yeah, it is totally. How is that just up this weekend, the art fair, or is
Yeah,
it
I think it's
ongoing
just up
or
through this weekend of like May
okay.
2nd, 3rd.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. But another
Yeah.
cool thing I saw last week, Paul Sapuya was in town and it was fun. He came and did a studio visit with me. And then we went out to see some shows. We saw the new museum exhibition again, which was great to sort of go through that for a second time
Fun.
and have
Yeah.
those experiences. But a highlight was the David Armstrong show at Artist Space because he's sort of that Boston school of photographers like Nan Golden, Jack Pearson, the kind of photography of people, places, memories, thoughts, all in these great installations. Really beautiful. It's sort of like a retrospective type of show, Artist Space, but it's really elegantly done in these beautiful vitrines. He passed away a couple of years ago, but the men he photographs are absolutely gorgeous, very full of pathos, very evocative. So that was fun. And then Paul and I went up to Chelsea, and his friend Lynette Yiadom-Boakye had a show at Jack Shaman of
Yes.
beautiful paintings that apparently she does from her mind. Like they're just kind of these invented scenes, but they look quite real, but they all are kind of surreal. But if people like eating pie, they're very strange, but they're very beautiful, beautifully painted. They're almost like Manet-ish kind of
Mm,
quality.
love that.
And so
Yeah,
that was cool.
sorry.
Have you seen that show?
I just saw it yesterday. I was gonna say the Conte like brown drawings. Like there's one horizontal of a figure. I was like that or one of the Raphael like portraits. Like because that drawing.
Then she has
Ugh,
yeah, Lynette Yiadom-Boakye has a horizontal drawing in that show that was one of my
yes,
favorite drawings I've ever seen.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
It's
saying.
of
I
a
was just
guy
like,
who's sort of leaning in.
yes. Oh
Yeah,
God. I hope
I'll
that
post
ends
that
up
to the Instagram
somewhere.
because
Yeah.
that drawing just like blew my mind. It was
I hope
great.
that ends up in some collection where we can go and see it because
But right up above from there is New Discretion's gallery, and they have a show of sculptures by Christina Cruz. But the sculptures are good, but what really captured my attention is her drawing board. She has this huge, long drawing board of like inspirations and like pins and connections between things.
oh,
And it's such a fun and interesting way of thinking through drawing and thinking through diagrammatic discursive thought, which really appeals to me. And I've been to that show now twice because I kept wanting to look at these like diagrams that she's put together. Those I'll probably post to the Instagram too, because it's just
yeah.
like the way that she's thinking about the work just blows my mind.
Well, that's so, I could see why you would be so into that too. I just love it. I want to see that. Yeah, I finally saw the Dominique Nioli, which is just spectacular. Yeah, those were just So, oh gosh, the surface, the texture, it's interesting because I started to hone in on the ones that I really felt something for. And sometimes they were the most simple, like the red dress, where you're just seeing like the every texture of the thread of the fabric or something that
The way
he's
he does fabric and patterning is like blows my.
and just so beautiful to think of like an Italian artist doing that too, because they are such masters of like, fabric and clothing and, just that attention. And then after seeing the Raffaello, and then seeing another Italian artist more contemporary is like just wonderful. But I also saw the Joan Semmel show at the New Museum, which was really fantastic. And,
How
this.
did I miss that? I was at the new museum twice.
Oh, why
That
did I
just
say the New Museum? I'm sorry, the Jewish Museum, because I was
oh, the Jewish
uptown,
museum. Right.
Jewish
Yes.
Museum. Yeah, and it was just yeah, it's fantastic. This whole idea of like using the body, a female body as a non-sexualized object, or you know, to just insert that into the history because there are so few examples. And then reading about how she had to really struggle to show some of this work because nobody was interested. It was like, that's
Yeah.
over. Somebody told her feminism is over, like all this stuff. It's like not cool. Okay, it's like stories you've been told and excuses you've been given, like everybody's been given for decades. But there was one piece that was really fantastic, which was like, I mean, there were many fantastic pieces, but one where she was participating in this bicentennial show, and it was all supposed to be sort of political work at the bicentennial 1976. And the curator was like, a female nude body is not political. How is this political? So then she inserted her painting between sort of a remaking of one of de Kooning's women, and then
Mm.
on the other side, a porn image of a woman. And she put those two paintings on either side of her painting. And he was like, okay. And he took, included that in the show. Like, I see how it's political. It's like to represent yourself
Yeah.
and what it feels like to be in this body versus the way that it is always perceived. And to have very little, to take back control of that as like a really, yeah, really
Joan
foundational.
Semmel is an artist I always used to show when I would teach figure drawing because I just feel like the way that she approaches the figure is so fascinating. But Gina, actually, you raised a point that is interesting, and I think we could maybe do it in another episode, is the excuses that you've heard from people or from galleries as to why one's work isn't selling or isn't of the moment, right? Like, I feel like there's so many times in my own career where something didn't sell or the show was not as popular as I would have liked or thought. And then there's always oh, well, people don't like intellectual work right now. Or, oh, people aren't into conceptual stuff. Or your work has too many images. Or I've just heard like the craziest excuses, oh, it's too erudite. Or, like, so it's sort
Yeah.
of funny to think about that we all have had times probably in our careers where we've been told our work is too much this or not enough that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you just
Yeah.
kind of be like, you know what, fuck you, screw it.
Yeah, and some of those are political and are literally foundationally like political, not even art world political, but just like the female body. Or like I remember an artist telling me, what was it? He couldn't sell a male figure. I've had this painting, it's been knocking around, no one will buy it because it's a male figure. The only thing that sells are female figures or whatever. This is a straight male artist saying this as though sort of like I'm like, don't blame me. Like I don't, like this is all created way before, but it's just, yeah, it's yeah, all of those excuses and how, I mean, many of them are in bad faith and just excuses, period. But also how they can like sort of, what am I trying to say? Fishtail? No, what am I trying to say? They can also
Dovetail.
truly be discriminatory as
Yeah.
well. Some of the preconceptions about what will sell. So if you make as your subject male figures, and then you're hearing like, well, male figures don't sell. So it's like, oh, but that could also be political and discriminatory in a certain kind of way. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
Not
something
fake.
I've been hearing a lot from galleries that I've worked with or that I'm friends with is that there's a real anti-intellectualism in the art world in the
Mm-hmm.
past handful of years that
Mm-hmm.
collectors do not want to buy work that is really about like ideas or has any kind of poetics or erudition to it. And that I've heard, even heard that from people I know who work at like bigger galleries
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah.
the owner or or
Yeah.
senior directors are like, oh, we could never sell that. There's too many. Like, there's ideas. There's concepts in it. Like,
Mm.
and that's sort of become a problem. That's something I think would be worth discussing is this kind of
Let's do that next time. Yeah.
anti-intellectualism in the art world because I wonder
Right.
if you have felt that or think that
Right,
too.
right, right, right. Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been really awesome. I want,
Yeah.
yeah, really fun to talk to you and yeah, just do what we
Anything
do.
interesting coming up for you in the next week?
What am I doing this week? I might go see some shows downtown. I'm going to be working. Do I have anything like any fun evening things? No. What about you? Are you?
I'm gonna go to probably Chelsea this afternoon, catch up on some things. I want to see the Sanford Bigger show, Boski.
Yes,
Uh,
yes. Well, actually, that's Joy McKinney. Danielle McKinney has a show opening at Boski this week.
yes, that's right. She's got the
Maria,
show.
yeah, Maria Calandra is showing at Fredericks and Freiser also same
Yes, I love
night.
her. Her
Yeah,
work
her
is great.
show's opening. And also Carla Black. I don't know how familiar you are with her work.
I know the name, but I
Scottish
don't.
Scottish artist who uses the material of cosmetics and lotion and toilet paper and all of these things in these historically like grand installations, like just tons of like facial powder. But I think she's having a show at Rotter, and I think these are more like mirrors with lots of makeup on them and things. Anyway, I love her work, and I've never like seen one in person. I've never met her, so I'm excited to go see that show also.
I also want to see N Dash at the Hill Art Foundation.
Yes. Oh my
See
God. Sorry. It just screamed. And Dash. Yes. Oh, I'm excited for that show. So
and then this
excited.
week, Corey's going to Venice, actually.
Oh, fun. Yeah. We should talk about
For the-
Venice next time too. Like, have
Oh,
you ever
definitely, because
been?
I have a
Yeah.
lot to say about that on many levels. We should
Yes.
maybe, even though I'm not going this year, I'm kind
Yeah.
of soft protesting it.
Yeah.
But maybe we could have like a Biennale episode.
There is so much to say. Yes, for sure.
All right. I will see you on the
Awesome.
flip.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll see you around this week.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye,
All right.
Tim. Bye.
Bye.